23 Olympic gold medals, Michael Phelps is arguably the greatest athlete of all time. But how would the best water-based athlete stack up against some of the best athletes on land? When this question popped into my head, the first thing I thought of was NFL players. Most pro football players possess a blend of speed, strength, and agility, which naturally make them some of the most athletic humans on the planet. Now obviously your typical NFL player isn't going to have a competitive swimming background, but there's a few that do, and there's definitely a few that could stay afloat. Ideally, we'd want to drop every NFL player in an Olympic-sized swimming pool and see how things play out, but unfortunately we don't have that luxury. Instead, we'll use a combination of anthropometric data and publicly available information to find out whether any NFL players could actually beat Phelps in a race. Let's get into it. The core difference between swimming and most land-based sports is that swimming has no shortcuts. A 6'5" kid with elite genetics is already halfway to being a college recruit in sports like basketball or football, but raw athleticism barely transfers when you find yourself in the water. In certain land sports, raw talent might only need a few years of coaching, and then boom, you're at an elite level. Swimming, on the other hand, requires years of technique building before raw athletic potential really comes into play. And we have a real-world case study that proves exactly that. Before we even get to measurements, let's talk about a guy named Mark Rubin. Rubin was one of the best age group swimmers in the country as a kid. 8-time high school All-American, state champion in the 50 and 100 freestyle, and yes, he raced Michael Phelps directly. At age 14, Rubin beat Phelps in 2 events at a meet in Baltimore. Phelps got him back in 2 others. It was genuinely competitive. Rubin even shows up on the USA Swimming all-time age group list, sitting just 1 spot below Phelps in the 10 and under 50 backstroke. The times are almost identical. So what happened? Rubin chose football. He went on to play at Penn State, first as a wide receiver, then as a safety. And here's the part that actually matters to our question. Rubin left competitive swimming after his sophomore year of high school because swimming demands year-round commitment in a way that football simply doesn't. You could take a season off from football and come back. Swimming penalizes any gap in training with an almost immediate decline in technique and feel for the water. Rubin's story is the clearest example of just how fine the line is between a future Olympic swimmer and an NFL player. The talent was there, the athleticism was absolutely there, he just picked the other sport. Now here's where it gets interesting. Let's actually put the numbers side by side and see how a Phelps-level build stacks up against NFL athletes. Phelps stands 6'4" and competed at around 195 pounds. His wingspan is 6'7", 3 inches longer than his height, which is a well above average ape index. For context, most people have a wingspan that roughly matches their height. Phelps' torso is disproportionately long, closer to what you'd expect from a 6'8" man, while his legs are shorter than you'd expect for someone his height. His inseam measured just 30 inches, typical of someone nearly half a foot shorter. That combination, long torso, short legs, is essentially the ideal hydrodynamic body shape for a swimmer. Less body to drag through the water, more surface area pulling you forward. His feet are a size 14, acting like natural flippers with every kick. His elbows, knees, and ankles are double jointed, giving him a greater range of motion in his dolphin kick than virtually any other human on Earth. And on top of all of that, his body produces roughly half the lactic acid of other elite swimmers, meaning he recovers faster both between races and between training sessions. That last point is worth sitting with for a second. Lactic acid is what makes your muscles burn and eventually shut down under intense effort. After his world record in the 100 butterfly, Phelps' blood lactate was measured at 5.6 millimoles, barely over half what other elite swimmers produced during the same event. That's not training. That's just how his body works. Now let's look at NFL Combine data. The average wingspan at the NFL Combine varies heavily by position. Wide receivers, one of the more athletic position groups, typically come in with wingspans between 72 and 79 inches, right around their height or slightly below. Tight ends measure slightly larger, often between 77 and 83 inches. So the majority of NFL skill position players are actually at or below the wingspan to height ratio that Phelps exceeds so dramatically. But there are outliers, and one name stands above them all. Calvin Johnson, Megatron, measured 6'5" and 239 pounds at the NFL Combine with a 40-inch vertical leap and a 40-yard dash of 4.35 seconds. His wingspan came in well over 80 inches, exceeding his height in a way that actually starts to approach Phelps' territory. His hands were enormous, with a reach that made every receiver comparison seem inadequate. His body proportions, a long torso, long arms, exceptional explosiveness, are about as close to an ideal swimmer's build as you're going to find in the NFL. But would he be fast in the pool? Almost certainly not at an elite level, but the raw materials are there in a way that simply aren't for football players. Johnson's build is the exception. For every Calvin Johnson, there are 100 tight ends and receivers whose measurements show wingspans a full 2 to 4 inches below their height. The opposite of what you want in the water. And this brings us to what these numbers actually mean in the pool. Let's ground ourselves with some context. The world record in the 100-meter freestyle, the most direct test of pure swimming speed, currently sits around 46.8 seconds. That's roughly 5 miles per hour. Phelps' best in the 100-meter butterfly was 49.82 seconds, one of the fastest times ever recorded in that event. For comparison, a recreational adult swimmer, someone who hits the pool a few times a week, has decent technique, and considers themselves a reasonably capable swimmer, is probably finishing the same 100 meters somewhere between 1 minute and 45 seconds and 2 minutes. A complete beginner might take 3 to 4 minutes. That's not a small gap. That's a canyon. An Olympic-level swimmer isn't just a little faster than an average person. They're operating in an entirely different physical reality. At full speed, elite swimmers are pulling through the water at nearly double the pace of a solid recreational swimmer. They hold that pace for the entire length of the pool while maintaining perfect stroke mechanics, efficient breathing, and minimal drag. The average person is just trying not to sink. Power output tells a similar story. Elite swimmers generate enormous propulsive force, not just from arm pull, but from the coordinated kinetic chain of the entire body working in sync. The dolphin kick alone, when executed correctly, can account for the majority of thrust in certain strokes. An NFL player has enormous raw power. An offensive lineman squatting 600 pounds generates explosive force that would embarrass most athletes on Earth. But that force has to be translated through water, and water rewards technique ruthlessly. Brute strength without proper mechanics is actually counterproductive in a pool. It creates drag, disrupts body position, and burns out an athlete far faster than controlled technical swimming does. Phelps himself had a max squat around 385 pounds, which is strong but unremarkable by NFL standards. Where he was truly elite was in his pull-up endurance, reportedly capable of 34 consecutive reps, which speaks directly to swimming-specific upper body strength and endurance. So what does all of this tell us about the actual question? Let's separate the candidates into a couple of tiers. The first tier is NFL players with zero competitive swimming background. This is the majority of the league. Some of them, in fact, can't swim at all. Famously, about a third of the Baltimore Ravens revealed in 2025 that they couldn't swim, which prompted Phelps himself to come to Ravens training camp and teach them. Roquan Smith, one of the best linebackers in football, admitted he could doggy paddle maybe 20 yards. Marlon Humphrey, one of the best corners in football, posted the original video asking Phelps for help. These guys aren't just not beating Phelps, they're not beating the average 12-year-old in a swim lesson. And that's not a knock on them, it just illustrates the point made earlier. Raw athleticism has almost no transfer value in the water without technique. The second tier is NFL players who are solid recreational swimmers and have some natural physical tools. This group probably finishes a 100-meter freestyle somewhere in the 1 minute and 10 second range to 1 minute and 30 second range if they're athletic and have decent basic technique. All things considered, they'd at least look athletic. They'd put up a respectable effort, and they'd still lose to Phelps by about 40 to 50 seconds in a straight race. That's not a close race, that's lapping them. The third tier, and this is where it gets genuinely interesting, is NFL players who are elite competitive swimmers before choosing football. And this is a very short list. Mark Rubin is the clearest example, though his NFL career was modest and he's no longer active. Josh Cribbs, the former Cleveland Browns receiver and kick returner, was a varsity Letterman swimmer, specializing in the 200 freestyle and butterfly. Russell Wilson has spoken about swimming laps regularly as cross-training and credits it as a part of his athletic foundation. These athletes have actual technique, actual feet for the water, and actual swimming fitness. They're not just athletic people who know not to drown. They are swimmers who've also happened to be great football players. Would they beat Phelps? No, but they'd give you the best version of this race. A former elite age group swimmer with NFL-level athleticism and peak physical condition, training specifically for a one-time competition. That's the best case scenario. And even then, Phelps' technique and physiology are so optimized for the water that he'd likely still win by a significant margin. Here's the final verdict. If you take the average NFL player, someone with elite land athleticism but no competitive swimming background, and put them in a pool against Phelps, it's not a race. It's barely a contest. The technique gap is enormous, the body mechanics work against most football builds, and the sheer hydrodynamic perfection of Phelps' physiology is something that can't be replicated by general athleticism alone. If you take the best possible candidate, someone like a hypothetical athlete with Kelvin Johnson's body, Mark Rubin's swimming background, and years of dedicated pool training, you'd have someone who could genuinely compete at a high level. But compete here means finishing within 15 to 20 seconds of Phelps in a 100-meter race, not beating him. The honest answer to this question is probably not, but the interesting answer is that the gap is smaller than most people think, if you pick the right player in the right circumstances. Swimming is a sport where preparation and genetics converge so specifically that even the most gifted athlete on land starts from essentially zero when they hit the water. Phelps didn't just train hard. He was built for this in a way that almost no human being in history has been. That's not a slight against NFL players, it's a testament to how uniquely, absurdly, almost unfairly well-designed Michael Phelps' body is for the one thing he chose to do with it.